You're listening to the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR Kutztown, and this is the Golden Hour, your home for all things insights, discussions, interviews, and recaps about all things Kutztown sports. I'm your host, Tommy Scuderi. Happy to be with you here once again, and it again was another relatively successful week for fall athletics here on the campus of Kutztown University. Kutztown football, field hockey, soccer, and volleyball all picking up wins. We're having success that we will dive in throughout the next hour here on the Golden Hour again on Tommy Scuderi here with you. And we will start things off first with Kutztown football. Kutztown beating Westchester 41-7 in their last meeting on the road on October the 25th. It was a dominant game from start to finish on the road for the Golden Bears. They got out to a 28-0 lead early at the half, did not let off the gas until they were up 41-0, eventually conceded a consolation touchdown to Westchester in garbage time. But ultimately, I mean, just another terrific performance from this Golden Bear team that we have just gotten so used to seeing from KU. They have been unstoppable through the first 8 games of the season. They are one of, I believe it's 8 unbeaten teams remaining in the rest of the country in Division 2. They will stay at number 4 in the AFCA coaches poll. They will not advance from that metric, but ultimately they will still, have a ton of success that we've seen, and we really can start to think postseason now as their next game against East Stroudsburg will be will be not a chance. It will secure the PSAC East title if they were able to win this game this upcoming Saturday and officially cement them a spot in the PSAC championship game for the third straight year. That would be as they try and three-peat once again and win their third straight PSAC title, not only the East, but the entire conference as a whole. But earlier today, I sat down with Lenniek Preston, Kutztown wide receiver, talked about the success that he's had, talked about the success the team has had, and what they're looking to do later on in this season, and the importance of that East Stroudsburg game to him. So this is wide receiver Lenniek Preston joining the Golden Hour. I'm here with Kutztown wide receiver Lenniek Preston. Lenniek, appreciate you coming on the show.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me.
So my first question is, what is the feeling in the locker room like after yet another dominating win to move to 8-0 on the year?
Well, the feeling in the locker room right now, everybody has the same goals right now. We know every week our goal is to go 1-0. We all preach it, players, coaches, everybody. We know that's the main objective. Trying to, compete for a natty and the PSAC championship too, of course. But yeah, so everybody's just energetic, ecstatic, ready for the rest of the season and what it holds for us.
The offense has really found its rhythm this year. What do you think has been working so well on the way to 8-0?
Excuse me. Dang,
No, you're
flu
good.
season. Um, I think the main factors is just us having that chemistry with our quarterback and everybody else on our offense. So we've been playing with each other for the past like 3 years, most of us. Me, Noah Crisilla, Rich Pacheski, we all been here for 3 years. Trevor Morum, the O line have guys that's in their last year or been here for the past couple of years. So we all had that experience of in-game feel and all that, and we all been practicing with each other, running plays, getting that chemistry, getting that feeling of how it's going to come or what's going to look like with these players in, with us together. So it's just everybody's just feeling comfortable now, really just in the rhythm all together, playing as one and just going.
How much of that explosive offense do you think comes from the chemistry that you talked about being built with the rest of your guys, whether it's with Judd, the running backs, receivers, tight ends, or the coaches?
Right. I feel like a lot of it comes from that chemistry, just being able to trust your guy's going to be down there to make a play, or trust that your guy's going to, give you that shot to go make a play. Just all along goes with trust, just trusting your teammates, holding your teammates accountable, and just holding that for yeah.
What has been the message from the coaching staff, not only regarding the Westchester win, but just throughout the year?
Um, like I said, the main message is really they just preach 1-0 every week. Don't belittle no opponent. don't have no mercy on no opponent. We're just going out there asserting our free will, dominating, do what we do, playing KU football, as they say, which that's just really in our mindsets. We don't look at nobody less than anybody else. We just look at it as another opportunity to go out there and play, and just do what we do, pretty much.
So you started the year with a bang. You made SportsCenter's top 10 with your first touchdown catch of the year. Can you tell us a little bit about that play?
Yeah. So the play was fourth down, 4th and 3. We really wanted to get points on the board there. We had a play where they sent me in motion to run a little corner route to the corner of the end zone. Once I motioned over, I seen like a little hole, so I was like, "Yeah, this play's gonna hit good. It's gonna hit good." And then as the play goes on, develops, I see the defensive back start dropping back towards it, and I look back, and Judge still gave me that opportunity to go get that ball. Just went up there, got it, and I'm not gonna lie, that play hurt. It hurt a lot, but I'm happy I made that one. That was my first college touchdown. Great way they started off. Great way to start the year off. And yeah.
So going back to that Millersville game a week or so ago, you had 109 yards receiving, which is the most of your collegiate career so far. What was working so well for you on that day?
Um. Well, I would say just pretty much the game plan. That whole week prior to it, I was just practicing. I felt really good in the stuff that we was going on, and felt pretty confident in everything of what we were seeing and what I would have to do against certain looks and everything like that. Um, so just repeating it in practice over and over again. So when I get into the game, it's like 100 times easier than it was in practice. And that's just what really got me comfortable and really got me in that groove. And once I get to touch the ball a couple times, then it's like I'm really in that hot mode. Like I'm really going. Yeah.
You followed up that performance. You had another career high. This time it was a 66-yard touchdown reception this past Saturday against Westchester. This is the last one I'll have you describe, I promise.
I got
Could you
you.
take us through that play?
Yeah. So it was that one was 3rd and 8. We had 2-minute drill going on. In football you got the 2-minute drill before the half times. So 3rd and 8. We didn't have too many successful plays before that. I look up, I see the safety off off on the field side of the field. So I'm looking to see if there's any other safety help going pop up. None. I didn't see nothing. So me and Jack, I guess we kind of had that little connection in our heads. We was like, this is going to be open at middle, closed middle coverage. So once I cleared that second level defender, I turned around. It was just green grass, and I was smiling. I was honestly smiling through the helmet. He put it on me, caught it, and just ran after that and just, scored a touchdown. Did my little celebration touchdown dance. You seen that? A little cry emote. Yeah. But yeah, felt pretty great.
So I want to go back to your recruiting process. What schools were you looking at in high school, and what ultimately made Kutztown the right fit for you?
I got to. Schools I was really looking at was it would be like a Villanova, a University of Delaware. Those are the highly main interests that had interest in me, and I was also interested in them. But I think the difference that really set Kutztown apart from them two schools was just I would say just like the energy I received when I got here. It was just like talking to the players and talking to the coaches. Like it felt like they were more of a family here, and they were more all together on one goal. Whereas the other schools, they was just kind of like, oh, we're Division I schools. We just come here, because we're D1. Like why not? But when you really look at it like that, it's like I would rather want to be with some guys I could really like trust on, call my brothers, love on for like lifelong friendships and everything, rather than just going play Division I football, that kind of deal.
What is the bond like in that wide receiver room? There have been some tough injuries over the past couple of weeks, but it really seems to be next man up.
Yeah, honestly, that's what we always preach too. Like our receiver room is deep, so like when somebody goes down, next man's ready to go. Next man ready to make a play. We have a lot of young, pretty young. We're all like mainly like juniors. We have at least another year or so left under our belts, so we all coming back next year pretty much. But yeah, everybody has that little experience and everybody's preparation, and they're prepared and they're ready. And coach is trusting us to be the next, like that next man up mentality. So somebody does get hurt, next man up is ready to go and just no hesitation, just ready to go in there and make a play.
One thing that I've noticed when watching you guys is just how much the ball is spread around.
Yeah.
How does that balance of targets really help keep defenses off guard?
Um, I would say that really can't it makes the defense so that they can't really specifically target one person and they have to focus on our overall offense. Because like if you try to focus too much on one of our receivers, another one's going to have a great game. If you try to focus on one running back, another running back's going to go off. Or if you try to focus on our run game, our pass game's going to be there. So it's really like pick your poison, like whatever you want to get beat by, pass or run, like you know.
How do you? I know you said you had film a little bit later today, as you guys start to prep for ESU. How do you approach film study every week? What do you focus on the most when looking at opposing defenses?
So preparing for the week, I just get an overall look at how many guys are coming back from the previous years. See if I've played against them in previous like last year's games or anything like that. And then I check out their film, see how they move, see how they operate, what kind of defenses they like to run, like if it's man kind of coverage or like zone coverages, and then just trying to see like techniques and think about what routes would work or what releases or kind of moves I can do that would help me separate from that DB in game, just preparing for it, and then practice those move sets all week, and then prepare for the game. So yeah.
What has been, and you might have brought some of these up already, but what have been some of your favorite moments or plays from the season so far?
Whew, let me think about that. Well, first off, I gotta put my first collegiate touchdown. The ESPN moment felt really great. I was really happy that that night. First off, that first game was crazy because it was like 5 hours long. We finished the game at like midnight. It started at what was it, 7? I believe 6 or 7. But yeah, that whole time we was just with the guys having fun throughout that period of time. It was just the craziest college or football experience that we had. But that moment, I will also say that Westchester moment too. I felt great. Just getting all that energy on that 2-minute drill, just executing it properly. All the guys loving you up, after a play, after big plays. And yeah, it's pretty much my favorites.
So you've talked about what the team goals are for this year, but what personal goals did you set for yourself at the start of the year?
Personal goals. Well, first off, I would like to say I set this goal for myself to just be accountable, like hold myself accountable, and have like my teammates and coaches have full trust in me. So like when I go out there, they know I can go out there and make a play for us or benefit the team in a way. Wanted to establish my spot as a complete starter, as kind of like a guy that we can go to, and also I wanted to get my first touchdown, which that was already done. After that, I'm just really here, just helping the team out. Like I don't have no personal goals really too much. I just have a overall goal, which that's to win a national championship. That's all I want. And that PSAC chip, that 3P ring, man. I need that third one. Need that third one.
So a win versus ESU would get you guys on your way. It would lock up the PSAC East with a victory over them this Saturday and allow you guys to start thinking postseason and PSAC championship. How important is that for your group?
This game right here is very important. It might be the most important game that we've had all season. Probably that we will have all season too, just to lock in our spot for that, the East or the PSAC championship. So our guys understand that. We've been understood that for the past couple weeks now. So we're just locking in. Everybody's dialed in now. Focus on right after Westchester, we was all dialed in. Honestly, everybody's ready to go against East Stroudsburg, and we've had a lot of chirpy games in the past. Like it's like back and forth, kind of. We got a little beef with them, so just preparing for it and just ready to go against them. Want to know.
So my final question is that every team has their strengths. It really seems like you guys have a lot of them. But what makes this team special in your opinion?
This team that we have now, you just, I feel like we're just all playing together. It's like together football. It's nobody's selfish. Everybody understands that we all have certain roles on the team that we need to fulfill for us to be successful. Nobody's kind of like a selfish player. Like everybody knows what we want to do, and it's just team ball for real, for real. You'll see a lot of teams that like have bad seasons or have seasons not going their way like they want to, and they will just kind of like retreat and like back up off the game itself and like kind of like screw up the chemistry that y'all have with the team. But I feel like we are all on the same page and we all understand what we're trying to do, and it just comes from that bond that we build. Like I said, like that brotherhood bond. Like we all talk to each other. Like you can name like everybody on the team, and like you could have personal conversations with them, and we all like know each other and stuff like that. So I feel like that is like a main reason, like a main factor in that.
All right, well, Lenniek, thank you so much, and good luck on Saturday.
No problem. Want to know, man.
Great interview. Great to have him on the show. Lenniek was the leading receiver for Kutztown on Saturday. He had 80 total receiving yards. Steven Burkhart was actually the second place receiver with 45. Rich Procheski had 42. Jamie and Bryant with 32. Some of your leaders there. Novak finished the day with 227 passing yards. He is really coming to his own as a passer this year. That's kind of been the biggest question mark surrounding Judd um, throughout the early parts of his career. He's always been terrific with his legs. He's always been terrific as a leader, but it's been his passing game that has raised a little bit of red flags over the last couple of years. But this year, I mean, that's not been the case at all. He has the highest completion percentage of his career. He's right around 65%. And a lot of that's weighed down by a couple of earlier games where he didn't have the accuracy you would quite like to see. It's been 70, 80% really the last 3 or 4 games. But ultimately, he went 16 of 25 for 227 yards with 2 touchdown passes against Westchester. Lenniek Preston had one. And then Aisha Coach for the third string tight ends got in the back of the end zone for his first collegiate touchdown as well. Judd has thrown for just under 1,500 yards. He has 1,475 and 13 touchdowns with no picks. He almost had an interception against Westchester, but ultimately has gone the entire year so far without throwing an interception, which is remarkable. He has thrown for more than 200 yards in 5 straight games and has multiple touchdown passes in 6 of his 8 games. So it's really been a clinic by Judd Novak over the last few weeks mainly, but really throughout this season. Kutztown got out to an early lead against Westchester. It was 21-0 at the conclusion of the first quarter, and Kutztown did it again. They blocked another punt and returned it for a touchdown. Second time I believe they did it this year. They've blocked a handful of punts. They blocked 2 against Westchester. It's the second game that they had multiple blocked punts, which is pretty much unheard of. Justin Gonzalez was the one that ultimately scooped them up the punts and ran. And then we have some highlights that we'll play for you in just a moment from this Westchester game. But taking you through what happened first, ultimately Kutztown did win 41-7. And it was a game where Kutztown was banged up at receiver. Noah Crisell has really been. There's not a true number one receiver on this team. It's very spread around, but if you had to pick one guy to really be, okay, this is the number one receiver on this team, it would be Noah Crisell, but they didn't have him. He got injured in that Millersville game. I believe he did end up dressing for this game, but when talking to Coach Clemens, he was like, yeah, we're only going to use him if we absolutely need to. No sense trying to rush him back. And when you're up 21-0 after the first quarter, there's absolutely no reason to be forcing someone who's a little banged up in there. Luke Zabo and Trevor Morum were key pieces in that wide receiver room as well, are expected to miss a little bit more time. Morum might be back this week, I believe was the assumption we were getting from Clemens, but ultimately with injuries, you never know. So we'll check in later this week. We'll see what the timeline might look like for Trevor Morum and Luke Zabo. And then Jaden Stewart, who has been out for quite a bit now. He only just dropped out of the top 25 this week in rushing. He was a top 10 rusher even after missing a couple games earlier on in the year. But ultimately, he's missed enough games that finally he's starting to drop out of that category. And other running backs are starting to catch up. But they're excited to get him back. They hope to do so, I believe, this week as well. They're eyeing a return for Jaden Stewart, but we'll keep an eye on that as well. And then Michael LeMay, we don't know how long he's going to be out, but we expect a decent amount of time. He was in a boots, I believe, had a practice injury, was the information that we got there. So unfortunate there. So that was kind of the injury report going in to this Westchester game, and it did not seem to matter on the road. KUR, we made the trip up there. The Westchester staff was very kind to us. They're very nice. They killed a bee for us. That was a huge bee. I mean, generally, like the size, the length of this mouse that I'm holding right now. You can't see it, but this picture, computer mouse, the bee was about that long. Not quite that wide, but it was that long, and it was killed for us. We were protected. They had a guy over there like giving out candy in the press box up at Westchester. We got a few pieces of candy at the half. They were giving us like live stats and everything at the conclusion of every quarter printed out. So very nice operation up there at Westchester. We appreciate their hospitality. Kutztown, though, on the field was not very hospitable. Again, they won 41-7. We have some highlights that we will now play from this game. Clip those together for you. These are kind of the big scoring and the turnover plays that you missed if you did not catch this Kutztown and Westchester game.
Novak is now under center. Extra tight ends on the field. Burkhart is in the I formation. Maxwell comes over as the fullback. It's going to be up the middle to Maxwell. Maxwell moving the pile, and he's in. Kutztown scores a touchdown on their opening drive once again. Luke Maxwell is the one to do it. Came in at a tight end position, went back into the backfield at the fullback spot. Took it right behind Ryan Trinecki and Billy Everett, and Kutztown caps off their opening drive with a touchdown. 9 minutes remaining here in the first quarter, just under 6 minutes. That opening drive, 8 up. It's 2 receivers right, 1 left. Maxwell and coach for the tight end set off set left. Play fake to Burkhart. Novak's going to keep it himself and go downhill. Novak up to the 5 steps inside, and he's in! Heads up running by Judd Novak as he was going towards the sideline, stepped inside, took it himself, and it is a 10-yard rushing touchdown for Judd Novak. That's his second rushing of the year. And Kutztown is on top 13-0 here with 4:56 remaining in the first quarter. They'll try to make it 14-0 off of the extra point of Dakota Campbell. Trey Hamlin III stands at the 24-yard line of Kutztown to return. Punt is blocked! Ball was loose. It is scooped up and Kutztown 10-5. We'll run it in the score.
Well, there's a special teams touchdown.
There's been a couple this year.
Justin
Gonzalez was there to scoop up the block, and Kutztown runs it in. So Trey Hamlin will head back to the sideline. He doesn't get his hands on the ball, but the rest of this special teams unit does. Dylan Schenk has that punt blocked and returned for a Kutztown touchdown, and it is now 20-0. Kutztown leading. Novak making checks at the line. Play clock down the 3s. He takes a snap and drops back. Looking down right sideline. Lenniek Preston wide open up to the 30. Now the 20. Foot race. 10-5. Touchdown. Lenniek Preston streaking his way down the right sideline. A huge, big-time throw and catch game from Novak and Preston. And Kutztown now on top 27-0 over Westchester. So now Hamlin will move up to the 35. Schenk at the 10. Kicks it away, and that one's blocked again. Ball was rolling right around the 30, a battle for it. Ball was loose. But ultimately, Westchester will fall on it, so that will send on the Kutztown offense ultimately. And another blocked punt from Kutztown, and that will set them up in Westchester territory for their first drive of the second half. Handoff will go to Burkhart out of the eye. Breaks a tackle, crosses the plane, and he is in. Stephen Burkhart. And that's just power football, man. Out of the eye. Burkhart took the snap, went right. And now it is 34-0. Johnson will stay in the backfield. The receivers set tight right, 1 wide left. O'Sullivan takes a snap, drops back. Again, will fire quickly over the middle, but over the head and picked.
Well, we'll see if that...
Did he come up with it?
And
just here, Harden came up with the ball. I thought it was overthrown, but Harden laid out there and brought that in. Further, I formation, Luke Maxwell, the fullback. Ben Martin, the third, is the running back. Lenniek Preston will set up slot right. Heavy set, a lot of offensive linemen on the field. Novak bootlegs out right. Fires. Coachver brings it in at the back of the end zone. Touchdown, Asa Coachver. That will be his first touchdown of the year for the third-string tight end. Kutztown fakes the run, bootlegs out right, and Asa Coachver sneaks to the back of the end zone and brings that one in. Sullivan drops back, works his way right, and just tosses that one. Tried to get out of bounds, but is picked. Was looking sideline. I think it was Cashon Jones, number 25, that brought that one in. As Sullivan tried to just throw that one into silence, but did not put enough under it. Cashon Jones, the redshirt freshman from Millville, New Jersey, comes up with the interception and will give Kutztown the ball back.
So that's what you missed if you didn't catch the Kutztown and Westchester game this past Saturday. Kutztown again wins it 41-7. They move to 8-0 on the year. You're listening to the Golden Hour, your home for all things sports, insights, discussions, interviews, and recaps about all things Kutztown sports. I am your host, Tommy Scuderi, here with you as we are diving in to Kutztown football first here on the show. If we look over at the box score of this game before we move on to go around the rest of the country, preview the PSAC championship rankings as they stand at the moment, and then preview this East Stroudsburg game. So that's what's left here for our Kutztown football segment. Kutztown rushed for 207 total yards this past Saturday on 36 attempts, averaged just under 6 yards a carry, 3 rushing touchdowns, only 1 yard loss and 208 yards gained. Novak, again, we saw it through for 243 yards, total passing on 18 attempts, 28 completions. Actually, some of those were Antonio Russo that came in once the game was secure. About 13 yards per completion and 450 total yards of offense and 2 passing touchdowns. Rounding out Kutztown, relatively disciplined. Only 3 penalties for 30 total yards. They've had some spikes earlier on in the season in their penalty totals, but ultimately were very disciplined against Westchester. Westchester had 4 penalties for 30 yards as well. Kutztown punted twice, 2 times for 86 total yards. Nate Millard averaged about 43 yards a punt. Will Smith did have a field goal try that he pushed wide right. So Will Smith is now 1 for 3 on the year in field goals. So that's something we will keep an eye on as the year progresses. Dakota Campbell made every extra point that he attempted. Looking ahead to the rest of the PSAC, we talked about it. East Stroudsburg lost to Shepherd this past week, which means that East Stroudsburg would pick up their first conference loss. They did lose the first game of the season to Edinburgh, but that did not count for PSAC East play. They are now at 5-1 in conference play, which means that if Kutztown beats them this Saturday, East Stroudsburg does come to town. Kutztown would secure the PSAC East once again for the 3rd straight year, and they would be able to really brings the question of how important is that Bloomsburg game. I mean, not to say that Kutztown would punt a game against Bloomsburg, but it certainly means a little bit less for you. I mean, you're still playing for the 1 seed in the national playoffs, so it's certainly a game that Kutztown would attempt to win. Obviously, not that they would go on Bloomsburg a week from now and try and lose, or 2 weeks from now. But you might see starters pulled a little bit earlier in that Bloomsburg game if they're able to knock off East Stroudsburg and secure the PSAC East title this weekend. And that would, ultimately allow them to turn and start keeping an eye on the West, which right now it's IUP's race to lose out there in the West. Again, if you're unfamiliar with the way that the football playoffs work, it starts first with your conference playoffs, the way the PSAC decides the champion. There's no playoffs. So I don't know why I said playoffs. There's one game. It's a title game. The champion of the East that is determined, through the regular season. Whoever has the best record through tiebreakers and all that in the East will play the best team in the West, and the same. That will happen on November 15th. So games are scheduled with the understanding that that last week is championship week. So if you are in, let's say you schedule a home game. If you are the PSAC East champion, you would host the PSAC West, and vice versa. And so it goes into scheduling like it alternates. So this year the East will host the PSAC title game. Last year it was the West. So typically West teams, especially those who kind of have a feeling they're going to be competing at the end of the year, will make sure that they schedule that last game to be a home game. Because if it's easier to switch out a home game logistically and just welcome a different opponent. And there's let's say you're scheduled to be on the road. Now you got to be home. The stadium wasn't booked and all that, so you could potentially run into some troubles there. So teams, and then vice versa. Let's say if you're in the West and okay, the title games at the East this year, we don't want to lose a home game if potentially playing for it. So we'll make sure whatever game that we schedule at the end of the year, that will be a road game. And then, it's easier to, but instead of going to, this school, we're going to go to this school. So that's kind of the thinking behind that. But all is that to say is that whoever wins the West, which right now it's a bloodbath. We thought at the beginning of the year it would be either Slippery Rock or Cal U, who have been the last couple teams that Kutztown has played in the PSAC championship that would ultimately lock it up. But they've lost to some tough teams. So right now it's IUP, who did take a tough loss to Slippery Rock, but then went back and beat Cal this past week. Slippery Rock lost to Cal, but then beat IUP, and they also lost to Gannon earlier in the year. So it's a whole mess over there in the West. But so that's likely going to come down to the final week. I don't think we'll see a situation where anyone in the West has the opportunity to clinch anything this week. But right now it is IUP at 3-1 in conference play, 5-2 overall, coming off that win against Cal U. Edinburgh actually is the 2 seed in the West. They're 3-1 in conference play. Kutztown obviously handled them on the road earlier on this year, but they're 4-4 in conference play. But certainly have the opportunity to make a case if IUP drops a game. Now all of a sudden Edinburgh has a chance to swoop in there as a 2 seed and get up there. IUP will be, check where they're at. They're going to be at Gannon they'll be hosting Gannon at home. Will IUP at 2 o'clock. So that's the game we'll be keeping an eye on. Then they go out to Clarion the week after on November the 8th. And then currently scheduled right now to head to Kutztown on November the 15th. If Kutztown beats East Stroudsburg, then Kutztown knows for sure, all right, we're hosting someone in the PSAC title game. It could very well be IUP. But obviously that will have to wait out there. The West, we don't know for certain how that's going to look. But Clarion right now has the 3 seed in the West at 2-2. Slippery Rock at 2-2 as the 4. Cal at 2-3 is likely out of it at this point. With tiebreakers being what they did lose to IUP, so even if IUP drops both games, they would be 3-3. Cal, actually no, they're not quite out of it yet. Cal still has an outside chance, but unlikely. Seton Hill at 2-3, and then Gannon at 1-3. So the West is kind of beating each other up over there, but ultimately, we'll have to wait and see who could potentially be coming to Kutztown in the couple of weeks. But here on KUR, myself, the rest of the football team, we will be obviously at the November 1st home game against East Stroudsburg. We'll have live coverage for that beginning at noon. We'll be out in Bloomsburg as well the following week on November the 8th, so we will have live coverage of that Bloomsburg game as well, and then ultimately the PSAC championship game. Potentially, not ultimately. We're hoping that is locked up next week. But even if Kutztown loses to East Stroudsburg, that would create some trouble. But I do think Kutztown, with the win over Bloomsburg, would potentially be able to put themselves back. It would depend on tiebreakers, but ultimately a huge game, and you'd rather just lock up the East now. At done, take care of Bloomsburg if you can, and then turn your attention to trying to win your 3rd straight conference championship. And then now with the new way that the Division II playoffs work is Kutztown would have probably gotten a bid anyway. Now every conference champion in Division II is guaranteed a automatic bid into the playoffs with the new expansion of the Carolina Conference. So it goes from 28 teams to now there's 32 teams that will make the postseason at the Division II level nationally. 16 conferences, so the 16 conference champions from those, they divide up into 4 super regions, and then there's 16 at-large bids for teams that have a compelling case, whether it be record-wise. Like in East Stroudsburg is probably going to end up an at-large bid, even if they don't win the East. If their losses were a couple tough losses that the committee might not like, especially if they lose to Kutztown again, they would be 6-3, potentially going to 7-3. So now it's like the fit a 3-loss team in there, but ultimately the PSAC will probably still get a couple other teams in there. IUP probably no matter what. I say no matter what. It's still too early to say no matter what. IUP dropping 2 games before the conference title game is unlikely. So you'll probably see an IUP team in there at large. Potentially a Slippery Rock could be in there as well. But those are teams that you kind of look for an at-large bid, teams with strong overall records that maybe their losses just came to tough teams on the road. So it wouldn't necessarily kick them out of playoff contention. In Super Region 1, there's a lot more wiggle room than there is in some other regions. Super Region 3, for those unfamiliar, is basically the SEC um, of Division 2 football. It's the strongest region. Um, that's where your Ferris State is up until this year. That's where Harding was. That's a lot of times where you will run into Grand Valley, or School of Mines is actually 4, but you run into a ton of tough teams down there in Super Region 3. Ferris State, by the way, we're all sitting here with our fingers crossed that they would drop a game to Grand Valley State. That was by far would be their toughest game left of the season for Ferris State, who's still unbeaten, the number 1 team in the country. They've been all year. There's really been nothing that we've seen otherwise to suggest that they shouldn't be the number 1 team right now, and ultimately that they'll even drop a game. If Grand Valley wasn't going to take them down, which Ferris State beat them 38-31 in the closest game of the season, they will likely cruise their way into the playoffs without any more speed bumps. I mean, you never know, right? Teams, especially when seasons come to a close, they get a lot more desperate when, especially even if the only thing is, okay, we can't win a title this season, but we can try and ruin your hopes, and that's good enough for us. So I mean, any given Saturday, for either Ferris State or Harding, who's the number 2, West Florida actually is the 3 in the AFCA. D2, that's where the discussion happens between D2Football.com and the AFCA, which is the American Football Coaches Association. West Florida's at the 3 in that poll. Kutztown at the 4, whereas in D2, it's Kutztown at 3, West Florida at 4. So West Florida is another team that will probably not see too many challenges. So you have to think the top 4, barring an upset, is pretty much set for the rest of the year. Kutztown will most likely sit at the 4 seed nationally, or not the 4 seed, but 4th ranked nationally in the rest of the country. Pretty much up until playoff time, where we start to. That's when you kind of hope that 1 and 2 go down, and you can slide your way up there, or make a case in your performance that you need a home game. So the way that the playoffs work, again, if you are unfamiliar with the Division 2 playoffs, it's 4 regions, 8 teams a region for 32 total. You will play each team's. There's no first round buys anymore, so it's 2 or 3 games in your super region. I think it's so the 2 goes down to 4, 4 goes down to 2. Yeah, so 3 games in your super region, round 1, 2, and 3. You get to the quarterfinals, where you win. The quarterfinals is your super regional championship, which Kutztown won in 2023. So then the 4 teams that come out of that super region are then reseeded based on what happened, all the year. So like, let's say Ferris State, right? If they, run the table and they go through their super region without a problem, they're still going to be the 1 seed. Same with Harding. And then from there, there's no neutral sites in the semifinals. So then it's the lower seed, like the 2 will play the 3 and the 1 will play the 4 based on reseeding. Kutztown was the 4 seed last year, or not last year, 2 years ago, when they went out and they had to get on the plane and go across the country to Colorado, and ultimately, got beat down over there, 31. I don't want to say beat down. The score looked a little farther than it was. There was a couple of empty possessions that Kutztown had in the red zone that made the score look a little bit farther apart than it was. But ultimately, it was 31-7 for Colorado School of Mines. Actually went, I think they lost to, I want to say Harding that year. Either Harding or Ferris State. I don't remember who won in 23. Harding might have been 22. And I think it was Ferris. So Ferris might be looking 3-peat. But anyway, so that's the way it works. So that's why we kind of keep an eye on these things, because right now Kutztown is at the 4. Let's say that what we expect to happen happens, or what the committee expects to happen happens. So the 1, 1, 2, 3, and 4 is Ferris 1, Harding 2, West Florida 3, Kutztown 4. Kutztown would have to go to Grand Rapids, Michigan, and play Ferris State on the road, which obviously Ferris State's a tough team anyway. You don't want to see them on the road, definitely not. So that's when you kind of hope. The hope was, all right, they drop a game to Grand Valley State in a tough game, not enough to kick them out of the playoffs, but it's hard to make a case for them being the number 1 team in the country. So maybe they drop to 3 or 4, and now even if Ferris runs the table in the playoffs, Kutztown now gets to host them in that game as a 3 or 4 seed. But all that was not to be. I mean, it still could. But as it looks right now, Kutztown would have to go on the road if neither Harding or Ferris State. Honestly, you'd probably need two of the three to drop a game and hope a lower seed has to come to your house here in Western Pennsylvania in December. Um, and you get a home game. So that's the hope. The hope is that Kutztown does well enough. They take care of their business and they get some help from some lower ranked teams in the country that knock off a couple of the top contenders. And now, maybe that happens in the playoffs, and now you don't have to worry about Ferris State because they get upset by a team that's a little easier to take down, or they lose a game, the last week of the regular season, and they're still in the playoffs, but now they're a lower seed. And if you do get to play Ferris State, it's in your house under your turf. So that's why we keep an eye on those polls. That's why it matters. To Kutztown, it probably doesn't matter much. It's, they're not thinking, okay, what do we get a potential home game in the semifinals or the playoffs? They're thinking, let's beat East Stroudsburg and lock up the East. So still a long way to go. Still a lot of football left to be played before you can, say anything. But that's the kind of thing that we keep an eye on this show. And tell you what they're all playing for, which is ultimately a trip to McKinney, Texas. Well, yeah, I guess I'll finish out my explanation of the Division II playoffs. The winner, once you get to those semifinal games, one plays 4, two plays 3, based on reseeding. The winner of both of those two games go to McKinney, Texas, and play at McKinney ISD, which is a high school stadium. But I encourage you to, if you're listening or you're on your phone right now or you have a way to, just Google McKinney ISD Stadium and just look at the stadium that has hosted the Division II National Championship for a number of years. I'll give you a second while you do it. Okay. It's crazy that's a high school. It's like it's basically a small FBS stadium. Like, it's a type of stadium. I don't know if Delaware, which is one of the newest FBS programs at the Division I level, has a stadium like McKinney ISD does. And that's a Texas high school. Admittedly, it's a big Texas high school. There is you talk about Texas high school football, there is like levels like 1A through 7A. It is like one of the highest levels of high school football down there in Texas, but it's just crazy the level of stadium production and money that exists down there. So they host the Division II playoffs every year. Texas is relatively neutral to most teams. Very rarely do you see a Texas team at the Division II level make it anyway. You see typically like a Ferris State from Michigan, Valdosta State is from Florida, which is the matchup last year. They both went over to McKinney, Texas, and that is played the week before Christmas. I want to say December 20th is the national championship game. So that is where Kutztown ultimately is trying to make it to. They have gotten as far as their program history as the semifinals, but have not gotten past there. Last year looked like it might have been a year that they could make a run, but ultimately they lost to Slippery Rock in the second round. They got upset at home, and then Slippery Rock would go on to actually meet Ferris State on the road in the semifinals, and they gave them a battle. I think they're up 14 points in the fourth quarter, but Ferris would rattle or would rally. They were rattled, but they would rally, and ultimately get the job done against Slippery Rock in the fourth quarter, and then they would win a blowout fashion against Valdosta State. Harding was beaten by Ferris State earlier on, which the reason why that's relatively significant is this year they've moved super regions. So in the past, which I would imagine this was probably done a little bit on purpose, Division II it's not going to come out and say it, but when they rearrange the conferences, I'm shocked that the conference that Harding is in, or I'm not shocked, I should say, the conference Harding was in moved over to Super Region 4, so that, all right, if Ferris State and Harding will meet again, two powerhouse Division II schools, they're not going to blow that matchup in the quarterfinals of, where it's, all right, maybe on one of their networks. They're going to wait until it's a nationally televised game if they can. Like the Division II playoffs is on ESPN2. Or the national championship game, I should say, is on ESPN2. So they're going to wait to the semifinals or the national championship, and that's a big-time matchup that you like to put on ESPN that represents Division II well. No disrespect to Valdosta State, but they were below. So that's, if I would imagine, some of the rearranging. That was the benefit of it as well. Is okay, we move Harding and Ferris State out of the same super region, so if they meet, it's going to be in the late stages of the playoffs, and it's a little bit better, ratings wise, because those are two bigger schools that have taken care of business in the past. But we will briefly preview this segment went a little longer than I thought, but we will briefly preview this Kutztown and East Stroudsburg matchup this Saturday before we would briefly step aside and round up field hockey, soccer, and volleyball on the other end of the break. But before we do so, we will take a look at Kutztown versus ESU. This was by far Kutztown's closest game last year in the regular season. Obviously, Slippery Rock was close that they lost. But this game against East Stroudsburg last year that was on the road, again, we at KUR were at, was the closest that Kutztown came to dropping a game. They were down 14-0 in the first quarter, but ultimately rallied and won 27-21 against ESU, a game that gave Kutztown a scare. And these teams historically they play each other very close. They are very evenly matched. How close? They've played 44 total games in their program's history, according to Kutztown's official website. Kutztown has won 22. East Stroudsburg has won 22. But recently, it's been all Kutztown. East Stroudsburg last win came in 2013. Since then, Kutztown has won 10 straight, but they've all been close. 27-21 in 2024, 34-27 in 23, 24-20 in 22, 21-14 in 2021. It was a bit of a blowout in 2019, 35-13, but close again on the road, 35-33 in 2018. Another blowout, 41-9 in 2017, 49-30, couple score game there in 2016, and then another blowout, 63-17 in 2015, and then 31-16 in 2014. So ultimately, all I have to say is, while this does have a history of being blowouts in the past, that's not been the case recently. I would expect this East Stroudsburg team to play Kutztown very close. I would expect this to be the toughest game of the season for KU. I honestly would think, given how the West has been, my personal opinion, this game for Kutztown is, if they are able to beat East Stroudsburg and move on to the PSAC championship, even if they do so, this is going to be the toughest game out of any PSAC team in the conference. I think this East Stroudsburg game, obviously when you go playoffs, games will get tougher, but I think that this will be the toughest game from any team in the conference that Kutztown will see all year. So it's a big-time matchup for KU. Do they have upcoming? A lot of things to keep an eye on as the national picture starts to come into play a little bit later today. Keep your eye out. It's the first alphabetical rankings of the Division II regions. These don't mean too much. They don't rank 1 through 10, but they will give you the first 10 teams that are in for each super region. So you know who's kind of, all right, who are they looking at to potentially get a bid here in the Division II playoffs. So that will probably be, you want to say 4 of the whoever they project to win the conference, and then 4 your at-large bids per region. That comes out a little bit later today, usually in the evening. But keep an eye on that at the NCAA.com Division II football. But we will briefly step aside here on the golden hour, and then on the other end, we'll talk about field hockey still unbeaten, soccer and volleyball season starting to come to a close. We'll dive into that on the other end here on the golden hour. Don't go anywhere. Back here on the golden hour, Tommy Scuderi here with you as we wrap things up, talking field hockey, volleyball, and soccer before we close this one out here today. Field hockey is on a historic season. We've been talking about it all show long, or all year long on this show, I should say, not this particular show. But Kutztown 17-0 with just one game remaining. 8-0 in conference play, no losses, number 1 team in the country without a doubt. And it's just been remarkable field hockey happening here in our backyard at Kutztown, PA. If you have not been to a field hockey game, even if it's not your sport, I'll be transparent. It certainly was not my sport, before I got here. But yeah, as now, my sister plays field hockey, so that's got me into it as well. But you're not going to get better field hockey, anywhere else than right here in Kutztown. They are just killing teams. It is they outscore their teams 93-10 that they've played. 93 goals, only allowing 10 goals themselves on the year. They've played 17 games. That's 7 shutouts. They're averaging 5 goals a game. That's number 1 in the country. 408 total shots, 24 of those a game. 74% of their shots are on goal. Only 3 green cards. They do have 1 yellow, but 63 assists, 31 saves, 84 fouls, and 249 penalty corners. And they are 2 for 3 on penalty strokes this year. Kutztown most recently took down Maryville in Frostburg, Maryland's 4-1 on October 26th. The day before, they took on Frostburg State, beat them 8-1. They beat number 10th ranked Millersville 2-0. Slippery Rock 7-0, 3-1 against number 5 Westchester, 3-0 on the road against IUP, 2-0 against Bloomsburg, 3-1 against number 4 East Stroudsburg, 8-0 against Roberts Wesleyan, 3-2 over number 7 Mansfield, an overtime win over Millersville earlier on. Beat Dewville 9-0, IUP 4-1, Wingate 9-0, 9-0 St. Michael's, Southern Connecticut Skate 8-0, and then number 8 Southern New Hampshire fell 9-2 to Kutztown to start off the year. So that's how we get everything back. And there was only 1 game remaining in the regular season for Kutztown field hockey. And it will be a heavyweight battle. It still will be, but it's a game that will have less stakes than we actually initially thought when we were keeping an eye on this game. It is Kutztown and Shippensburg, number 1 and number 2 in the country. They traded back and forth a little bit this season. Kutztown started as number 1 before Shippensburg had some impressive wins over ranked teams, and they moved up to that number 1 spot. But Shippensburg has dropped 2 games this season, which normally you'd say, all right, 2 games, that's natural over the course of a season to lose 2 games. Kutztown has dropped none, so Kutztown has already secured the PSAC regular season championship on the year before going to the PSAC field hockey championship. I'm not positive, but I want to say that pretty much no matter what happens against Shippensburg, Kutztown will be hosting the semifinals and then ultimately the PSAC championship game on November the 7th on Friday and then November the 9th. Obviously, Kutztown hopes to be in those because despite being as dominant as they are and appearing in back-to-back national championships, Kutztown field hockey has never won a PSAC title in their program's history, which is crazy to say for a team that's won a national championship and then was the runner-up the next year. But they've never done so. They will try and pick up a big win over Shippensburg and finish the year unbeaten in the regular season. So that is what they will be protecting against the Raiders. That is November 1st, this Saturday at 5 o'clock on the Golden Bear Sports Network. And Shippensburg, if they're able to put a little bit, close the gap a little bit between them and Kutztown, they can start making an argument come postseason time. And the Monday, November 10th, is the NCAA selection show. That will be at the conclusion of the PSAC tournament. They'll go around the country and see, all right, who's going to go where for an opportunity to go to the PSAC title game, or the NCAA title game, which is in Bloomsburg. We were talking about a little bit earlier, so stay tuned. That might be a game that we end up carrying here on KUR Bloomsburg. Not too far of a trip. We are going there on November the 8th, so maybe we head back and do a PSAC championship or an NCAA championship game, depending on if Kutztown is there or not. Don't want to say for certain. We'll see. Obviously, it all depends on how Kutztown does. But that is how your field hockey update for the day. We'll speed through things here as we're starting to run out of time here on the Golden Hour. But 17-0 for field hockey, 8-0 in conference play. Just one more game left as they try and protect their perfect season against Shippensburg this Saturday. Make sure you check that one out as well. Women's volleyball, a couple games below 500 to start to the year. They've been a little bit rocky in conference play under first-year head coach Jason Barshinger, just 2-6, but 10-12 overall. And again, for a team that's won one match, and they won one match all of last year, a much better team that we've seen. They've been more competitive. They did get swept at home against East Stroudsburg on October the 25th after dropping that to them the day prior, 3-2. So 3-match losing streak that they will try and break this Halloween, this Friday against Bloomsburg at home, and then they'll see Lock Haven on Saturday at 4 before heading out to Westchester and Millersville, and then closing out the year November 14th against Shepherd on Friday, and then November 15th against Shippensburg. So playoffs still on the table for this Kutztown volleyball program. They've not been there since 2011, but they, do have to start turning things on here on conference play to try and earn a bid to the postseason. Round things up with soccer. Kutztown soccer 9-4-1 overall on the year. Just 2 more games left for them this Wednesday. They will be at Bloomsburg at 4 o'clock on October 29th. And then they also will close out their year against Shippensburg. So Shippensburg, a common final opponent for all these programs. That is on November the 5th, on Wednesday at 3 o'clock, as they try to secure another PSAC East or PSAC first round appearance and try and get back to the NCAA Division II Women's Soccer Championship, which they made it to the second round of last year for ultimately dropping to Gannon. Kutztown did make it to the PSAC title game in soccer this last year, but ultimately came up just short of winning the conference title there. But that is your roundup for the week here on the Golden Hour between Kutztown football, volleyball, soccer, and field hockey. It's almost time in the next week or so to really start taking a look at basketball, so stay tuned for that if that's your sport. Got a few weeks until that season gets underway. But a lot of things to keep an eye on. Tom York, the new head coach of the men's program over there. What can Coach Maloof do with the women's program? All things we'll be starting to take a look at in the next week or two. And also championship week starting to come up here for our fall sports. And actually, I just saw this article for football. We'll say that before we close things out. Zach Perda received Special Teams Athlete of the Week honors. That was a few minutes ago. That we became aware of that. He had a blocked punt in the first quarter, so that highlight that I played a little bit earlier was Zach Perda that ultimately blocked it before Justin Gonzalez scooped it up and returned. KU then blocked a punt later in the game, as Perda had 5 solo tackles in that game as well. So Zach Perda is PSAC Special Teams Athlete of the Week. That will be the final update we have here on the Golden Hour. I've been Tommy Scuderi. I appreciate you sticking with me here for your home about all things Kutztown sports. We'll get you back to your programming here on KUR.